Look at these two gentlemen helping me on stage. That's my husband right there, Chris.
He's much cuter.
Well, I am honored to be here with you ladies. If you're enjoying the conference, why don't we get a round of applause for that? All right. So I know that you're thinking, legal session, I'm about to go back to school. But no, it'll be different. In fact, my tagline is the lit lawyer because I like to keep legal fun. So hopefully, yes, someone's like, yes, I love to keep that same energy. I love that. So we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk some stuff. We're going to get real. The only thing I ask is that you all participate. Is that all right? Yes. All right, awesome. So I have some questions for you. How many of you are business owners by a show of hands? How many of you have been in business and you've wanted to quit by a show of hands? How many of you have been in business and someone has copied you by a show of hands? How many of y'all wanted to fight? Okay, I'm just making sure I'm in the, I gotta test the temperature. I don't know how real y'all gonna let me get. Okay, so that's good. I don't do criminal, so if you were to get in trouble on that, I couldn't help you with that. But how many of you know that being in business takes a lot of grit and a lot of emotional energy? And one of the things that I've realized is that being in business is tough, but it's so rewarding. But for a lot of my clients, they are emotionally attached to their business. How many are emotionally attached? Be honest. Which means that when someone does something for you, when they come for you, you have sometimes an emotional response. That's why you hired me, right? Because I don't have, they call crying, oh my gosh, she copied me. I'm like, well, we gotta get her. Like, problem solved, bullets loaded, let's go. So the tagline of Mobile General Counsel is we help you make your brand bulletproof because if you build it, they will take their shot, okay? That is our tagline, and no matter what you do, people will take their shot at your business. So we're gonna talk about the 3 legal weapons you need in order to make your business bulletproof. So how many of you have ever stayed up all night wondering about the legal side of your business? Oh, some of you have. Oh, that's great. You all should go to law school, because ordinarily the answer to that is like not many. And I saw it was about half of you that have. So we're gonna take you from this, looking a little sad, and I do not know this woman, but this photo is okay to use since I am talking about copyright today. But we're gonna take you from this today to this, another happy woman that I do not know, but she is now being recorded. So ma'am, thank you for your energy and joy. So this is what I want you to leave feeling like. We're gonna go through some introductions and we're gonna talk about contracts, copyrights, and trademarks. So those are the big 3 that we're going to discuss. Because I can tell from the energy of the room and from the beautiful display of the sets and everything else that they have here, that a lot of you are creatives. How many would describe themselves as creators of things? Like you're a creator, you create, okay. How many would describe themselves as a service provider? And how many have product-based businesses? So you sell a product but don't sell a service. Okay, excellent, that's good to know. So let's talk a little bit about my entrepreneurship story, why I'm here, so you know a little bit about who you're listening to. I do have a law degree, in case you were wondering, so no issues there. I'm not gonna be like an episode of Suits for any of you who watch that show. But I had a very traditional path, went to the University of Illinois. Anyone from Chicago? Oh! Yes, one in the front. That's all I need. Chicago gets that. Okay, perfect. Are you Chicago too? Oh, Chicago. All right. Oh, we're covered. Front row and back row. We're good. Okay, good. So I was born in Flossmoor, Illinois, which is outside of Chicago. You know the real reason I ask is because real Chicagoans don't let me claim it if I live in the suburbs. So now I have to be specific. I could have claimed Chicago, but okay. So I lived in the south suburbs. My husband and I then moved to Bronzeville. I went to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, then went on to Northwestern Law School and started at a really large law firm called Kirkland & Ellis. Who's heard of the BP oil spill? Okay, great. So they were the firm, not a good thing, but they were the firm that represented BP in that case. And I was one of the attorneys who worked on that. And there were a lot of large cases that the firm litigated, and it was good in the sense that it was great experience. I was one of the only black women there, so in all the diversity pictures, it was like, Ash, get in front. And all of that was me. They were like, we got to show we're doing diversity. There she is, get in there. So all of that was happening, and by all accounts, I was successful, right? I was making close to, but when I left my career, I would have brought in $300,000 that year. So my family was like, oh, she's doing good. Like, you don't need to do anything else. But I had a calling on like the inside. It was something that was like, I'm bored. It really wasn't even that deep. It was just, I was bored. I was simply bored. And because of that, I realized the companies I was helping were humongous, but I wanted to bring that same level of vigor to the companies that I represent now every day that are emerging businesses. Not small, but emerging. They're like pre-billionaires. So I represent them with that same level of vigor. And the entrepreneurship space is when I learned people are copying people. They are looking at your Instagram statuses just to copy the content. They won't even tag you and all of that. And so I decided to focus on intellectual property. So copyrights and trademarks all fall under intellectual property. So not only are you all creators, but you have what's called intellectual property, literally the property of things that come out of your mind. And that's what we're going to talk about protecting. So I left that career, started Mobile General Counsel, and I also started a speaking business called Speak Your Way to Cash, where I travel around and speak all around the country, and I teach other individuals how to book paid speaking engagements. So if you're interested in my podcast or social handles or any of that stuff, it's just called Speak Your Way to Cash. So are any of you speakers in the room? You like to speak? Excellent. Okay, great. So, check out the podcast. Check out the podcast, girl. Okay. So we're not going to talk about that today. But if you have questions, let me know after, because I'll stick around. But that's essentially my entrepreneurship story. And I don't know how many of you left a really stable position to be an entrepreneur, but the differences are startling. Because at my last company, we had departments for everything. My paralegal had a paralegal and 2 assistants. So it was really big. But when you own your own business, you have to run all the departments. And you don't get paid for running all the departments, you just have to run them. And what a lot of businesses do is they focus on the departments that make them money, but not on the departments that protect the money. So I want you all to repeat after me. Contracts protect your coins.
Contracts protect your coins.
One more time, contracts protect the coins.
Contracts protect the coins.
That's why it's integral. Because I get it, we're business owners, so we're always thinking about profitability, but the legal side of it literally helps you protect all of the money that you're bringing in. Without it, it's very, very difficult for you to protect your money. So let me talk a little bit about your businesses, or learn a little bit about your businesses. How many of you are an LLC? That's like the business structure you use. Okay, great, great, great. Corporation? Any partnerships in the room? Well, okay, a couple partnerships in the room, all right. And how many of you own a state trademark? A federal trademark? Oh, well, y'all are in the right place. Okay? So we'll talk about what that means and why that's important. Let's start off talking about copyright. So essentially, what is a copyright? Do you need a copyright? Why does any of this matter? So a copyright is essentially the rights you have to created works. And we'll give some examples to really bring this home. And then I have a hypothetical, because we're going to put all of you in law school for a minute. But copyrights are the rights you have to your created works. The rights that you have to your created works. And it gets a little bit confusing, because trademarks and copyright are typically used interchangeably. Here's the other thing. If you all have questions at any time, then feel free to just ask the question. You don't have to wait for a Q&A period, but let me know, because I want to make sure you all understand it. Yes?
Okay, this is off copyright.
Okay.
We'll go back to this, but do you suggest LLC, corporation, or partnership?
That's a great question. So I think of it in terms of the level of protection that you have. So if you're a sole proprietorship, so if I wanted to start a cookie company tomorrow, I would start it as Ashley Kirkwood and just go to the bank, get a separate bank account. I'd be what's called a sole proprietorship. But let's say someone were to get really sick from eating those cupcakes. They could sue me personally. They could sue, my husband and I own our home together. They could come for the house, the car, all of our assets, because you are your business. There's no separation. So an LLC is typically on the further end of protection, because it separates your business and personal assets. A partnership, if you don't put your partnership into any other entity, that partnership is the same as a sole proprietorship, except 2 people own the business. So think of sole proprietorship and partnership as essentially the same. There's no protection between you and your business. And without a partnership agreement, so an agreement about how you all are going to do business, who can contract the other person to things, the default setting on partnerships is that either partner can enter into contracts for the business. And that gets a little scary. That's like me and Sarah have a business together, Sarah goes and takes on $100K in debt without my signature, and that's 100% legal because we have a partnership. And we didn't have any partnership agreement that actually stated, no, 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 Sarah, that's inappropriate, we both have to sign. So if you are gonna be in a partnership with one other person, you really, really wanna make sure you have all those things delineated. So what most people that come to me do when they're first starting is they get into an LLC because it's easier to maintain the documents for it. It's relatively inexpensive, unless you live in California. Nothing's inexpensive in California. Yeah, so including legal filing. Like in Illinois, it's $150. In California, I had somebody who said it was over $800. Yeah, so that's maybe not for California. But that's typically what we recommend, especially if you aren't gonna put yourself on payroll. Let's talk money. The real issue with all of these different entities is you have to know yourself. So there's the legal side of it that's like the corporation may be the most ironclad and the most protective, but if you know you're not gonna put yourself on payroll, you know that you're gonna try to pay your rent out of your business money, like if you're not going to do all the paperwork to make sure it stays safe and it stays separate and it stays maintained, then I would not go into a corporation because all the benefits you get go away as soon as you don't follow the rules of that actual entity. So if you think of it as a house, the sole proprietorship has the weakest roof. The LLC has one of the most solid roofs, but the corporation has kind of an ironclad roof as long as you follow all of the rules of the corporation. So you always, no matter the entity, you want to have a separate bank account because you don't want to get caught up in the taxes. And if you're just starting and all of this is like, I don't even know how to pay myself, I'm not on salary yet, I would highly recommend a book called Profit First. I think it's a great book to talk about business accounting, not the LLC stuff, but it'll actually give you a great system for saving for your taxes, paying yourself. Someone's read it. She's like, yes, girl, I read that book, changed my life. So literally, I read the book, then I went and set up like all these different bank accounts. So you have to read the book to know why that happened. But that's a really good book that I recommend. Does that answer your question? Okay, excellent. So in terms of copyrights, it happens almost automatically. In the legal world, there's two things you gotta know. One is the rights that you have just by living and breathing and creating. The other is the way that you enforce those rights. So you automatically get copyrights right after you create a finished product. So when you write a book, you gain copyright protection for that book. However, if I wanted to sue someone in federal court for copying that book, then it's a little bit different. In that case, I have to make sure that I actually registered the book with the federal government's office. So you may have certain rights, but if you don't do what it takes to get those rights registered, then you can't sue anyone for actually infringing on them, or you can't collect money damages. And what you want to do when someone copies you is not beat them up and go to jail. That's not what you want to do. Not at all. What you want to do is get money from them. So that's how you think about your legal setup. Like your setup should be such that if you violate this, if you come in my house unannounced and I do not invite you, then I can sue you. So that's kind of the way that it works, and you get money for it. And ideally, you don't even have to go that far as suing. It could just be a demand letter that you write, and then you're able to recoup money that way. So books is the #1 way that copyright comes up, but it's not just books, it's blogs is another really good way that it comes up, and then shirt designs. So a lot of people can get their clothing line trademarked, but what the trademark office wants to see is how you're actually utilizing that mark, that brand name. Essentially, if I had a really cute design on this shirt, who has a cute design? Anyone have anything graphically on their shirt? Okay, stand up. Do you mind standing up? Okay, perfect. This is a great example. This shirt is super cute. That's really cute. So I need to know where you got that. I'll talk to you after. But this shirt is great. So can everyone see what's on her shirt? Do you mind turning around? What is your name, our model today? Nadia. Okay, Nadia has a fab shirt on, right? So the actual design of the shirt can be copyrighted, that design, because it's essentially an artistic work. But if she wanted to get, let's say that's her clothing line, if she wanted to get the clothing line protected, that would be under trademark law. So what you look at is if it's ornamental, if it's a design, if it's something that you created, it's artistic, that's copyright, but the actual tag of the shirt would be something that you would look at to see what's the brand is being trademarked. Thank you, Nadia. Let's give Nadia, is that right, Nadia, a round of applause? Okay, perfect. Thank you for dressing so fabulously today, that's awesome. So that's essentially the difference between copyrights and trademarks. So let's talk about social media, because this is where copyright really comes up. And I have a hypothetical, so I'm gonna need you all to be ready to participate on this one. Let's say my BFF Beyonce calls you and she's like, hey girl, hey, Blue Ivy is turning, I don't know how old the child is, maybe 9 or 10, whatever the age is. So Blue Ivy is turning 1 year older. I want to do a fab birthday party for Blue Ivy. Would you create it for me? And what do you all say? Yes, absolutely. So now you're all excited. You're working with Beyonce. You've talked to Blue Ivy. She's very particular because her mom is Beyonce, so she knows what she wants. And she wants a princess party. So you design a beautiful princess party. This actually was designed by a friend of mine, Mariah Malone at Modern Day Mom. She does, her sets are wild. Like, she can do anything. So you design a princess party for Blue Ivy. What's great is it's all over social media. Blue Ivy has her own 1 million followers. She's posting it. Beyonce's posting it. Paparazzi was there. They're posting the pictures. So what do? You post the pictures, right? Like, you want to post the pictures. But the question is, can you post it on social media, or is it copyright infringement? So if you think you can post pictures of your work, then raise your hand. If you think it's totally cool, like I'm posting the pictures, whatever. Now, if you think it may be copyright infringement, raise your hand. To post your own work. Okay, raise your hands. Everyone has like strong opinions about Blue Ivy's party. So
There should be that contract when I'm hired, right? The clauses are going to define if I own my work or it's for the client.
that's good. So one way to see is you look at the contract. You see what the contract is. But these pictures were actually taken by the paparazzi. Oh. Okay, so now I'm seeing some heads like, no, you can't post it. So yes, so the actual thing is you cannot post the pictures. Now, what typically happens, and this is what's so interesting, Blue Ivy's in the picture, your work is in the picture. Beyonce has no problem with you posting it because she was your client, but when pictures get posted on social media, oftentimes we don't know who took the picture. So you have to get the copyrights from the actual photographer that took the photo. And oftentimes with celebrity photos, it's not the celebrity who's going to try to sue, it's the paparazzi who purchased the picture and owns the rights to it. So essentially, I could be in someone's photo and I can't even grant you, but what would typically happen is I would grant you. If you're like, oh, can I use this photo of you taking our stuff? I'd be like, oh yeah, sure. But I don't know that they got the photo from the paparazzi that was there, because paparazzi follows me, obviously. And I don't know, I'm in E! News, Ebony, Essence, Jet, I can't keep up. So I don't know, I'm like, yeah, take the photo, whatever, it's me, no problem. But you don't know, so you have to be really careful about that and figure out, well, who actually owns this photo? Who took the photo? So the operative question is, who took the photo? So your answer was great because you was like, I need more questions. I have more questions before I answer that. That's excellent because that's what you want to keep in mind of. So how many of you do photo shoots for social media? That's like a big thing now. Okay, great. So one of the things that comes up now, because people are getting more savvy to this, is some photographers, when you sign their contract, they maintain the rights to their work, even though the pictures are of you. Typically, they do that so that they don't have a problem reposting images they took of you if the lighting was great or if that worked out really well. But if you are, now, I'm gonna be honest, when you're in a pinch and you need a photographer, you're not really caring about what that contract says. But ideally, you'll have time. This isn't like when you're in a rush, but you have time to actually review the contract, because most photographers that I've worked with have been very willing to negotiate the terms of that agreement or explain the terms and make them make sense. Yeah. Yes, we have the great videographer, photographer here. So yeah, so you want to make sure you talk about it with them, because for them, they're like, oh, well, honestly, a lot of photographers that I've worked with, they've downloaded these contracts. They don't even understand them themselves. Like, they literally downloaded the you don't have to admit it, it's fine. But a lot of people download these contracts online, and what they don't know is there's language in there that'll say things like, you can't use the photos for business use, which is no one is taking professional photographs in 2019 for the most part, unless it's a wedding, for non-commercial or non-business use. So that type of stuff you want to get written out of the contract, or normally it's not an issue, but you at least want to bring it up to them and get them to say something in writing like, oh, it's fine, you can use it for business use, when you're not in a pinch, because I understand when people are in a pinch. So let's talk about contracts, because contracts protect your Yes, you all remembered. Okay, great. So like when they come in, they're like, what did we learn? Contracts protect the coins. Okay, great. So why do you need contracts in your business? Anyone? Anyone have any contract horror stories? Yes. Okay. What happened?
I built
Yeah.
But I give everyone an estimate so they know what the cost is right up front. Like, it's not a shop, like, this is your breakdown. All I say is that it might be a little bit more expensive depending on, sometimes you open up a closet and all of a sudden you're like digging through it for 7 years, That's more money. But it's like a couple $100. So I gave her the thing at the end. I did 6 spaces in her house, which took me like almost a week and a half of my time. And when you organize it like that, you're there like 9 in the morning till like 9 at night. Like basically, when they wake up, you're at their door, and when they go to bed, you're like, peace, So I billed it to her. I gave her the bill, and it was like $200 more, like nothing crazy. And she full on told me she's paying me what she thinks I'm worth, and she cut me like $1,000. And that was like all my time because the rest was literally bins and like accessories. So like she literally just said, no, I think, and the thing is, when I left the first time before she got the contract, she was like, I can't even believe this has changed my life. You are amazing. My husband wants to meet you. He's obsessed with this. Like, this is a whole game changer. And then literally and then she told me, I overspent, so my husband's gonna freak out. So I'm paying what I think you're worth. And she literally did it for $1,000.
So she signed a contract before you did the work and still did this?
Yeah, and my dad owns a business. He's had like 35 years. He's like, I'm gonna go knock on her door. And I'm just, it's not. It just wasn't.
So your dad would need the criminal lawyer we talked about earlier. Yes. Right.
Yeah, and I just wasn't worth it to me at that time. But it really did make me see like I would have to sit down and go through it with them.
Yes.
Because before I'd be like, here, sign it. I don't think she like really looked, but she went and nitpicked everything. Like, oh, I don't think you did this. I don't think you did this. I'm like, you did not say that when I left until you got me done.
So that is a phenomenal contract horror story. It's a horrible story. Only because I'm a lawyer, I'm like, those are good facts. This is very deep. Okay, so no, like interesting. And when did she sign the contract? So yeah, so like that is, that's what can happen though. That's what can happen. And you actually had a contract. So one of the things that from that experience, hopefully you've changed your contract, because one of the things you can do, because we don't really have time traditionally to go step by step over the contract with each and every person. I understand that one of the things that we do as business owners is we try to get people to sign stuff and pay stuff as quickly and as seamless. Anyone else? Because that's like, I'm like, pay the invoice now, child, pay the invoice. And they have to pay half. So one of the things you can add, if you have something like that that's like, you may end up paying more than what's on the original quote, is at the end of the contract, if you use a CRM system like Dubsado is the one that I use, then you can say, they have an option where you can actually use check boxes, and it'll say something like, you do understand that if I'm in your house over 5 hours, you will have to pay $200 more. You do agree to pay any overage designated by the service provider. And you want to make sure that if you have something in your contract that's like, this is a quote, but if your house is a mess, I will charge you extra for that, then you want to make sure they agree to pay that up front. And those are provisions you want to highlight out. So sometimes when you sign contracts, you'll see things in bold, you'll see things in red, but I would do an additional checkbox making them agree to paying the overage. And then when they don't pay the overage, I would send a demand letter, because here's what happens. People defy our contracts, and then we, being nice and being busy and being understaffed, allow them to do so. And so they think it's okay. More importantly, skip what they think. We think it's okay for people to violate our agreements, and that does something psychologically to you as a business owner. If you don't fight for your business, people will try you every day of the week. I get DMs about legal advice all the time. I literally gave my assistant, I was like, look, I'm going to a conference today. I know I'm gonna get legal advice DMs, because when people hear me talking about legal advice, they want legal advice for free. You respond to those messages. I don't even respond to them anymore, because in my business, I wanna be the lit lawyer. I wanna be fun, I wanna be nice, I wanna be like, hey girl, hey, yes, absolutely, please. But then when you DM me asking for free legal advice, then I have to have systems for that. So the important thing is you address it. It doesn't matter how you address it, but you address it. Even if you send the demand letter and she doesn't respond, you address it. You address it. Because if you don't, things can happen. And it's very difficult to address in the moment because there's this emotional attachment. So what I would recommend is, if you've ever had a situation like, and what's your name? Kelsey. If you've ever had a situation like Kelsey or something similar, pre-write out the email you will send in the event that someone violates your contract.
Yeah, because it really made me like ask everyone, do I do a good job? Am I bad at this? Or is that bad? You know, like,
and that's the psychological impact.
like, I shouldn't even charge this.
No. So here's the thing. Who thinks they're good at what they do? Okay, so a lot of this becomes a sales issue. All of you in this room are worth your weight in gold, pure gold. But there are some individuals that are just cheap. Y'all ain't never met no cheap people? Cheap. They're just cheap. And they do what they can get away with, because most business owners are great people. They got into it because they love it. How many of this, is this your passion, anyone? Like, this is what you've wanted to do, you've always worked hard for it. So when it's your passion, your goal is like I love doing what I do. And so even if someone undervalues me, sometimes I let them get away with it because I love doing what I do. Now, this is me in the beginning. But what I learned is if I don't value it, no one else will. So you have to fight for your rights. And when people defy your contracts or they don't pay, one, they're not your ideal client. So here's how you spot out people who will not be your ideal client before it gets to that point. If they circumvent your processes, so your legal process, your contracts start at the consult phase. If you do any services, anything like that, make them pay something for a consult if you can. Sometimes in the industry you can't, but I've seen people do just $25 for a consult. Just some level of monetary, some money exchange, even if it's just $5 to hold the time. And most people now are kind of used to that. And when they sign up for the consult, have them go through a questionnaire. Before they submit the questionnaire, you can put what's called a disclaimer there that will say something to the effect of, you do understand that by doing this consult, I am not obliged to service you. This is just the discovery period. The reason you do this is because your contracting process has to start well before they actually get to the signed contract. So you're training your customers to understand that you're running a business, not like something else. Like, this is a real legitimate business. And if you get them to agree to things on the front end, like little disclaimers, then they're used to signing your agreements. Again, most of this stuff is just psychological. People believe if you don't have contracts in place, if you don't have invoicing, if they didn't have to do anything, but if they could just talk to you whenever, speak to you whenever, they start treating you common. And more importantly, you as a business owner can't determine who are the exceptional clients and who is not. Because exceptional clients follow processes. They follow procedures. They don't mind signing agreements. If you meet someone and like, oh no, I don't like signing contracts, they are not trustworthy. Like, period. They don't want to agree to anything. Like, these are all ways before you do the work to figure out if this person is really a good client for me. So the key contract terms, is there a question?
I just have a question as far as when you say something not monetary, I do a deposit to book a date for a party. And I've gotten where I was chasing them after they pay the final bill, which drove me nuts. So now I just, they have to pay it to me prior to the event. So it's paid in full.
I have an idea. There is, because I know a lot of people do that, and I have a client who's an event planner, and one of the things that we started was having her put her clients on payment plans. So I think I'll get most of your emails, but if I don't have them, I'm going to tell you where to text so I can get your emails, because I'm going to send you guys a system called partial.ly. I'm going to send you the link to it, but essentially you can put your clients on a payment plan and the final payment date will be the date that they have to pay, so it's automatically deducted. You don't want to chase anyone for anything, and typically when you're doing invoicing and things like that, that's what happens, is they don't pay until the end. But you could tell them like, hey, you're going to pay this deposit now, and the system allows you to set all of that up. So one of the things that I would highly recommend, and I'll send everyone the link after this, is to put them on a payment plan processing system that gives you control over the final date of payment, but forces them to give you their credit card information on the front end, and there's a contract built into that you can have customized for your business. Because otherwise, it's not fair. It's just not fair. And that's why a lot of people go in and out of the event planning side of the industry, is because they can't get people to pay, or people want to have you plan a $50,000 event for $500. So, yes.
I started getting a credit card information prior to doing the deposit, but now that card's on file. I paid anyway prior to, but if the date comes up and, I'm putting a payment from the card on file.
That's the thing. And people will cancel cards in a minute, especially people who are like overspent. They're like, oh, no, I'll just cancel the card. Or they'll say that the charges were fraudulent. And so credit card authorization forms are really important, but all of that, the language in your contract has to be really clear, because if you use PayPal or any other Stripe or Square, they ask you typically for your contracts to prove that you charge them what you said you would charge them. But I would put them on a payment plan that will say like, hey, you can pay for this, you can pay $200 a month on this, $300 a month, versus you doing one large lump sum. And framing is everything. So one of the things that I teach in Speak Your Way to Cash is sales strategy. So framing is everything. So you don't say like, hey, I'm gonna need you to pay on this the whole time. You're gonna say, to make it easier for our clients and to help with budgeting concerns, a lot of my clients love our new payment system. It actually allows you not to get some huge bill at the end, but it allows you to pay every month. It's so much easier for you. Here's the link to sign up. Just sign up by midnight to hold your spot. Like, make it like it's for them. This is all for you. We made it. I want to get your money so much easier, and you want to pay it easier, and I don't want you going broke by the end of this event. I know you're going to go over budget. Like, come on, like, just pay me every month. I don't have any problems. So those are some things to consider as well.
Is there any, like I've heard a lot of people use retainer versus deposit, and those words interchange.
Yes.
Is there a better one to?
Yes, that's a great question. You want to use deposit, non-refundable deposit. Not retainer. Retainer is actually, in the legal sense, it's something that's specific to lawyers who do refundable legal work. So for us, we do flat fee legal services, so we don't even utilize retainers often unless we really have a retainer client, and that starts at $5,000 to $10,000 a month. So unless you have me on retainer, most of the services for us are flat fee to accommodate the emerging businesses that we work with. So you want to say a non-refundable deposit, and you want to make that clear. Like, you could bold it and underline that as well. Yes.
So I know that you mentioned you use Dubsado. I do as well. What's the benefit to adding partial lease?
Yes, Dubsado does not allow you to take the payments automatically out of their account. So you can utilize them together, which is what I do, but Dubsado just is an invoicing system. Partially is a real deal payment plan system, and it takes the money out automatically. It has its own contracts and all of that stuff. Dubsado? Yep, and I'll send you all the links to Dubsado as well, because I think they're running a special right now.
Do you know if HoneyBook actually allows that?
I don't. Only because I don't use it, so that's only. It may. I've heard great things about HoneyBook, actually. So one of the things you want to think about for any contract that you have are going to be the terms of the contracts. You want to have the name of the parties. And here, make sure you have their legal name, the name on their license. If it's a business, you want to make sure you have the name of the business and the entity distinction. So it can't just be Mobile General Counsel. It needs to be Mobile General Counsel PLLC, which is we're a professional LLC. So that's the distinction there. A lot of the contracts that I've reviewed don't have that level of specificity. And if it were to go to court or go before a judge, those little things become big issues. An acts of God clause. A lot of what you all do, even as event planners, or if you're planning to deliver a large shipment of products, can be interfered with by the weather. So if the weather happens, or something happens where you unfortunately get sick, or you break a leg, or something outside of your control happens that you can no longer perform, you want to have what's called an acts of God clause. It's also called a force majeure clause, but acts of God is fine. Essentially, you want to give yourself an out. In sales, we used to call this a CYA clause. Cover your, I won't say the word. And then schedule of deliverables. When are you going to deliver, and when are they going to pay? You want to make this very, very, very clear. When are you going to perform, and when are they to pay? And then jurisdiction if everything hits the fan. How many work with clients outside of their home state or home country? Okay, excellent. So you want to make sure that you have a clause in your contract that says, I live in Illinois, you may live in New Mexico, but if this contract needs to be litigated, it's happening in my home state. The reason for that is the default rule is essentially most of the time that you have to go where they are, where the defendant is. Yeah, which is very laborious, and so it doesn't work. So you want to have a clause in there that kind of gets you out of the general rule. That's what contracts do. They protect your coins, and they get you outside of what the general rules are. So one of the things that we do at Mobile General Counsel for businesses is we write all of their contracts on the front end. They utilize them for however long they work. And then if they need a new contract because they add a service, then we'll do those as well. But we give it to them in Word, and we give them a video of me walking them through each and every clause. That way they understand it and can reference it. Because for most people, they don't want to get new contracts drafted for each client. You typically just need a few standard contracts, and we can help you figure that out. All right, so we already had Kelsey volunteered earlier to tell her contract horror story. So we're gonna talk about trademarks. What is a trademark? Trademarks are anything that distinguish your brand from the next brand. That is essentially what a trademark is. So let's talk about my other BFF, Taylor Swift. So Taylor is dope because she gets all of her sayings trademarked. She has probably over 35 trademarks. Her name is trademarked, her clothing line is trademarked. So let's talk about all the things that she could have trademarked. Her clothing line, that brand name could be trademarked. Does she have a makeup line? I don't think so. Not yet, maybe she's gonna compete with Rihanna next. But if she had, since she has her album covers or any speeches that she does, she can get her name trademarked for being a live performance brand that she operates under. She can have that same name trademarks for album covers. Any podcast that she were to create, she could have that trademarked. And all of her little sayings, she gets them trademarked. So who has a tagline for their business or a slogan? Anyone? Depending on how unique it is, you can actually have your slogans trademarked. Who knows, who's heard of Tiffany & Co., the jewelry company? That actually looks like Tiffany blue right there, that blue right there. So that color for Tiffany's is actually trademarked. It's called Tiffany blue. You can have your colors trademarked. Who knows about Crayola? That green-yellow combination, they had that trademarked. Who knows Supercent? Color and box? Okay, some people, all right, cool. So she is a makeup line, and when she came out, had her products designed in such a way that Crayola, the company, reached out to her and said, hey, we have those colors, that yellow and that green, trademarked. You can't use that. And she had created so much makeup utilizing that actual design that she had to get all of that stuff repackaged in a way that was not infringing on someone else's mark. Now, whether it was actual infringement or not is a separate story, but she got a letter and she responded. And that shows a really good point that I want to make. When someone infringes on you or you think they are, oftentimes having a lawyer send a strongly worded letter is all you need. You may never have to go to court. You may never have to have the lawyer spend $20,000 litigating. You just need the right, strongly worded letter. And another tip that I'll keep between, well, it's being recorded, I would say keep between us. But one tip that I'll say, and I was telling someone outside, is that a lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't know if I can really own this or whether I actually have legal protections over it. Letters don't care. Write the letter. Like, defend yourself as a default. Just write the letter, defend yourself, and see what happens. Because some people just don't want the problems, and they'll change it just because they received the letter. So do you need a trademark? Do you have a unique business names? The names that are most easily trademarked are unique. They're unique names. I have a client who had a shoe company. Her name was so unique, it was a combination of a variety of different names. And so you want to make sure that you have a unique business name. I did so many consultations, I talked to so many business owners, and some of them will do things like, oh, we sell hair extensions or hair clips. And the name of the company is like cutehairclip.com. It's like, no, that's not gonna work. Like, that's not unique. So it really needs to be unique. So think about Sprint. That's actually a jog, but they use it for cellular phones. Think about Verizon. I don't really know, like Verizon, what that means, but it doesn't have anything to do with cell phones. So it's a name that they were able to rebrand for themselves. Or you could create a name, create a whole name for your company. Whenever you do that, that's going to be the best. Do you do business in more than one state? So for those of you who are US based, the federal requirement is that you do business in more than one state. For those of you that are international, there was actually recently a change where if you want to get a domestic trademark and you're an international business owner, you have to use a US-based attorney. So that's definitely something else that I would recommend as well. And do you mind name sharing? So here's what I mean by this. Would you be totally pissed if your mom or your dad or your family member calls you one morning and says, hey, honey, I thought you were doing this event planning business, but it looks like Sarah down the street started a business as well, and she's using the exact same name as you? How many would be mad? So then all of you need trademarks. Because if you don't want to do name sharing, or if you would be upset if someone were to utilize your name, you want to protect it. Yes?
So my company is almost 10 years old, and about 5 years ago, there was a company, I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she's out in California.
work and actually got some followers because people were tagging her and then thought they were tagging me, thought they were tagging her. But anyways, but my question is, could she like trademark the name even though I've had it all of this time? Like if she
Yes. And here's the thing with the law and with all of this is someone can always file the application. Whether or not it'll get approved is a whole nother story. But if you don't want them to file the application, you need to file it. Ideally, what would happen is she files it and the federal government does some research and realizes you had the name first. But what if they don't? So you don't want to leave it to chance. If you know that that's the business name you want to use, then you want to go through and get a lawyer to file your trademark and or do it yourself. And I have a class called Get the Tea on Trademarks, which actually teaches people how to file their own trademark application if they cannot afford it. But if you can afford it, get a lawyer to do it. And the reason for that is when you file it, regardless of if you have a lawyer file it or you file it on your own, there's a lawyer who's going to review that application at the federal government. They have their own attorneys that work day and night to review the applications, do the research, and if they find anything wrong with it, they'll kick it back and they'll ask you to write a legal brief about why you should actually own the name. And most people are okay with doing some paperwork on the front end, but they're not okay with writing an entire legal brief to fight for their name. So getting a lawyer on the front end is just the better way to go. So you want to do a search. First off, I know now, because we're girlfriends, that you all do not have trademarks, but I would recommend all of you at least put the TM symbol behind your name. The TM symbol, the trademark symbol. If you type in trademark on an Apple phone, it'll come up. It's like that little TM that you can put behind your name. And you can do that without owning the federal trademark, but it at least puts people on notice that you're claiming trademark rights over that name. I don't know if it'll prevent anything, probably not, because you won't be in the trademark database, but it's at least good to put the world on notice that you're using this in the manner of an actual trademark. You can't, where can you get it? Is that what you asked?
Where can I do that?
Oh, everywhere. So like on your website, you can put the TM symbol behind your name. It's literally, if you think of, it's TM small behind the name. So look up the trademark symbol, the TM trademark symbol. When a mark is registered with the federal government, they will have an R symbol, R with a circle around it. That means that it's actually registered with the federal government. But the process is essentially you want to do a search. It's called a test search, TESS search for your name to make sure no one else is utilizing it. You want to then file. You'll do that at uspto.gov. There's a lot of specifics that go into the filing process. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through those. You're going to respond to an inquiry. Most of the time, the government will have questions, and they'll ask you those questions, and you'll have to respond. Sometimes they will deny your application, but you can file a legal brief to actually say, I know that you're trying to deny this, but this is why this needs to go through. And if you have a lawyer write it, we put case law in there and make really strong arguments. And then you're going to wait for final approval. The process takes from 6 to 9 months. So it's not a short process, but it's definitely one that is 100% worth it if that's something that you're thinking of doing. So I didn't have a lot of time to go through the logistics of the actual trademark process. If you want a free training on this solely, the trademark process and all of that, I'll send it to you. Just text your name and email to that number, and I'll send over that information, the information for the payment processing system that we talked about and Dipsado that we also talked about in terms of systems you can use. And I personally recommend Dipsado and partially because of the fact that they have really strong sections where you can actually put in good contract language. That's key and vital. Now, all of this was a lot of information, so I just want to do a review. We talked about copyrights. If you're working with a photographer or a videographer, or you're posting something that a celebrity did with your work, you want to make sure you go to the owner of the actual picture. We talked about contracts, because contracts protect your Absolutely. So you want to make sure you get your contracts done. And we talked about trademarks. If you want to own your business name, then that is 100% something that we can help you do. And you want to, at minimum, if you never work with a lawyer after this, make sure that you've done a search on your name to make sure no one else actually owns it. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it valid if I do my contract, or it has to be done by a legal professional?
That's a great question. So there's no requirement that you use a lawyer to write your contracts. You can write it yourself. The problem that comes into play is if you're not familiar with contract language, you may not know what to include in the contract. So the benefit of hiring a lawyer on the front end with contracts and trademarks, it could be a one-time investment on the front end, and then you could reuse that contract and just edit like your client names and things of that. So we create custom contract templates. But there's no legal requirement that you utilize a lawyer to draft your contracts. And in fact, if you cannot utilize a lawyer, at least have a contract. Just make sure you write it in plain language such that you can understand it as well as the other party. Any other questions? Yes.
We need 1 more hour.
So questions. Okay. So how is someone taking time? I don't know the time. Oh, great. Awesome. So here's what I'll do, because I was told there's not another session after this. I'll stick around and answer some of the questions. And if you all can, because I flew all the way from Chicago, if you thought this was helpful at all, if one of two of you could give me a review, that would be wonderful. And if you can do that, raise your hand, Chris. Just come to Chris and he'll show you where to get the review done, and then I'll stick around and answer any questions that you all have, okay? All right. Yes. Thank you.